Personnel and Human Services Committee to order. And last week, 2 weeks ago, or was it last week? Anyways, we've already met, and each of you have been presented to the committee, and tonight we're going to hear from you. First, I would, let's see, who goes up first? Oh, Joan Lesperance, we appreciate your time coming. And Joan is being nominated to the Council on Substance Abuse Prevention, and if you would like to share who you are and to the city and council, and also what motivates you to want to be on substance abuse prevention.
That's a subject that's very near and dear to my heart because I know people who have OD'd, friends that have lost family members.
Right.
And it's something that I'm very interested in to prevent.
So you have seen the very difficult, dirty side of...
Absolutely. Absolutely. I actually have a nephew right now battling.
I'm sorry for that.
It's a tough issue. It's a tough disease.
Well, coming from personal experience, you very well may be able to be of help to the city.
Thank you.
I'd appreciate that. And your background, you've had a lot of different things you've done in your life.
Yes, I spent most of my life in customer service. That's mostly what I've done. So I have dealt with people from many walks of life. Unfortunately, now I no longer am able to work.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But that's okay. Just, stay busy.
Does anybody have any questions of Joan?
Thank you.
Well, we appreciate it. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And next, we'll be meeting with Scott Horan, who's who would like to fill an unexpired term on the Traffic Study Commission.
Good evening.
And good evening. We had quite an interesting conversation.
Yes, we did.
Maybe you could share a little bit of that and who you are, Scott.
Scott Horan, I live on Tiffany Street. I've been a resident of Attleboro probably since 2004. I reached out to the mayor regarding some traffic concerns, and just in general, he mentioned that there was an opening on the traffic committee, and maybe I'd be a good candidate for that. I have 25 years experience in technical support engineering. I'm hoping to bring some of the background, some of the technology, maybe we can bring into the traffic committee and how we can improve some of the concerns for the city, and just in general, I'm really excited and trying to get involved in my community and helping out any way I can.
I appreciate it. Are there any questions anybody would have at this time? Well, one thing is for certain, we will continue to have traffic and maybe even more traffic.
It ain't going away, and traffic is very much like water. It's going to find the path of least resistance.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
And next, we're going to meet Bonnie Moore, who lives at Bishop Street in Attleboro, to fill an expired term on the Conservation Commission.
Yep.
Thank
Hi,
you.
everyone. I've been a resident my whole life. Grew up here, went to college somewhere else, but came back. And I live here and have a couple of businesses here, so both residential and commercial property. And I thought conservation has always been, I'm an outdoorsy person, so conservation to me is just a natural. And I saw that you actually had 2 openings on that committee, so I figured that would be the best one to help out.
Are there any particular things about the Conservation Commission that you're especially interested in?
In general, just that I hate to see everything built up, and I do like to see alternate uses and smart uses of land. And I, heard about the whole hunting thing and all of that, and I just think that it's a place where some of my skills could probably benefit the city.
Councilor Conti.
Bonnie, I think this is not the first time you've been to this podium. I think I remember you coming here
No,
before.
it's the first time.
Well, thank you. Thank you for volunteering for the Conservation Commission, because that's one commission that I think should always be a full commission and hasn't been full for a long time. I'm curious to know whether or not you've had any experience in graphical interfaces.
In
Graphical interface, GIS? It's not a barrier to help out on a Conservation Commission, but it's a direction where everything is going. And,
is it just like mapping or something?
Yes, mapping,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, well, I'm a mechanical engineer, and so everything I do is electronic anyway, drafting and such, so.
So if it interests you, there's a shareware called GRASS, G-R-A-S-S, GIS. And it's what's used by United States Geographical Society and a lot of government, including NASA. And it's free. And if you have an interest to dig in that, I think Nick Wiley's going to really appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It sounds like something I could just pretty much jump into, so,
Well,
yeah, if that would help, yeah.
It has a full user interface and full manual and online tutorial to help you through it. And if you're a bright woman, so I think you're going to catch on to it really quick. And I know in my world in assessing, it's dominating everything that we're doing. So thank you, Bonnie, for volunteering to be on the commission, and I think you're going to be a great addition.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Does anybody else have a question? please?
Sorry.
Okay, we're all set. Thank you very much for coming, Bonnie. And as we had discussed earlier, batting cleanup is Fred Uriot.
Yep.
I'm getting it.
That's all right, thank you.
From 1010 Oak Hill Avenue
Yep.
to fill an unexpired term on the planning board. So that's...
Born and raised here in Attleboro.
Okay.
Been here all my life. In my early years, I actually owned a successful tool and die shop in Attleboro in the Foster Meadows building. After that all went to China, I decided to get into real estate because I actually had a big passion as far as that goes, and I've been doing it ever since, about 15 years now. So when I found out that a position came in on the planning board, it struck my interest. I wanted to be part of it, and for the planning and development of the city. I know it's an important board, so.
Certainly is. Does anybody have any questions, please?
Fred, it's been a long time.
How you doing, Rick?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good. Fred, I think a person of your skills on that planning board is really well suited. What a great marriage.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
You're going to have to take an ethics exam with the state, and you're going to see that there's probably a few cases you're going to have to excuse yourself on.
Okay.
But your contribution to that board is going to be very well appreciated.
Thank you, I
And
appreciate
thank you
that.
for volunteering.
Thank you.
Please. Councilor Delizio.
I agree with the words from Councilor Conti. I was very happy to see your name come down
Thank you.
2 weeks ago on the communication. So, you'll do a great job, and, congratulations.
Thank you very
And
much.
thank
I
you for
appreciate
volunteering.
that. No, thank you.
Councilor Dolan.
I've known Fred a long time, and he'll be a huge asset. And even though he does real estate, he also, because we're friends outside, and he cares about conservation as well. So I think there's a good balance that he'll bring to the planning board, and he's really smart and dedicated, and he'll be a huge asset.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to ask a question or share something? Okay.
Thank you
Well,
all for
listen,
having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm very
Appreciate it.
appreciative that you want to do this.
Thank you so much. Have a
Okay,
good day.
take care. And last but certainly not least, we have Mary Flaherty, 353, I got to bring my glasses, 358 South Main to fill an unexpired term on the Council on Human Rights, which is how I came in, what I was doing before I joined this body. So,
Thank you for the invitation to be here tonight. My name is Mary Flaherty. I am a mother and a graduate student studying software engineering. When I first learned that the Human Rights Committee existed, Council existed, I was very excited to try to be a part of it. And when Tom O'Grady said that he was stepping down, I was excited to be an even bigger part of it, hopefully, to make an impact on our friends and neighbors' lives in some positive way that affects human rights issues that they might be concerned about.
Can you share a little more about your background for us?
Sure. I've had a variety of jobs over the years, but they've mostly focused on technology in one form or another. I'm self-taught for most things that I've learned. I graduated with a fine arts degree, and I'm very easily transitioning into software development and engineering because it just seems to come easily to me, so I'm happy about that. But the variety of jobs I've had over the years has allowed me to get to know people who have experiences that I didn't have directly, but I was able to witness some of the darker sides of human rights violations. And so in that way, I'm excited to try to be a part of a group that's addressing those issues in Attleboro.
Well, thank you. Does anybody have any comments, questions? Councilor Dolan.
I've known Mary for a short time, and in the little amount of time I've known her, she's expressed that she's very passionate about the human rights issues, and I think she'll be an asset to that board as well.
And I also have known you, and I'm very excited that you want to join this board.
Thank you.
You are a person who, when you say you are going to do something, you do it. And not only that, you do it very, very well.
Thank you.
In what I've seen. So, thank you. Anybody else like to share? Well,
Thank you.
thank you very
for your
much.
time.
We have already held the vote on these 5 candidates, so I believe that concludes the business of the Human Services Committee tonight. And I call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
You need to call for an adjournment.
Aha, I'll call for an adjournment. Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.
I'd like to call budget and appropriations to order at 6:44. I gotta wait till 6:45.
By the way, ArcGIS is the way to go.
ArcGIS is expensive.
Watch your clock.
But for personal license.
No, that's a home license. Doesn't give you all the things that Grants GIS gives you.
Okay.
Long minute, huh?
All right, at 6:45.
GIS has GIS.
I have 4 quick motions tonight. They were actually all spoken about at some point last night. So first, from the docket of May 7th, 2019, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to increase the expenditure limit for revolving fund number 2610 fire ambulances in order to provide additional capacity to pay current expenditures associated with providing EMS service and under the provisions of Chapter 44, Section 53E half, as amended, approve the expenditure limit of $1,200,000 for revolving account number 2610 fire ambulances outlined under Chapter 20 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro for the remainder of the fiscal year 2019.
Second.
Thank you, Todd. This one came down from Chief LaChance, and this is part of the Municipal Modernization Act where we can change the expenditure limits. So each year, the Municipal Council authorizes the expenditure limits for the revolving funds as part of the budget. On June 5th of 2018, the council authorized an expenditure limit of $1,100,000 for the fire ambulance fund. Because of the significant increase in call volume, EMS revenue has surpassed the expenditure limit for the last 3 years. In fiscal 18, the ambulance fund revenue was $1,169,423.40, $1,754,135.10 in revenue went to the city. Total revenue was $2,923,557. Total EMS revenue in fiscal 2019 should be $3 million or more. 1.2 would be allocated to the fire ambulance fund. However, because of the current expenditure limit, only 1.1 can be expended by the fire department. So in order to provide additional capacity to pay current and future expenses associated with providing EMS service, it is the chief's recommendation that we approve to increase the expenditure limit to 1.2 for fiscal year 2020. Because this does not modify the revenue allocation percentages, it will have no effect on the city budget. I also have a list, if anybody wants it, basically what comes in and out of that fund. And Deb gave it to us last night as well. Any questions on that? Councilor?
Council, to say, you might want to just scan that for the public who may not understand where the money revolving fund. goes.
Yeah, and it's a good point, Counselor, and it's something that I plan to do with all the revolving funds, just so we have that as transparent, because I think, as we saw last night, there's a little bit of confusion around really what can come in and out of the revolving fund. So I do appreciate that suggestion, and I'll wholeheartedly take it into consideration. Any other questions, concerns from anyone, not just my committee? Counselor?
The motion talks, first of all, I don't think I've ever seen a section 53E and a half. That's a first for me.
Yeah,
But,
yeah. Welcome to Mass General Law, guy.
Yeah. But it talks about for the remainder of fiscal year 2019. Is this for the remainder of fiscal year?
This is for the fiscal 2019, because what will then happen as part of the budget, we're going to vote on the expenditure limits for all of the revolving funds.
Got it.
So,
Okay, that makes sense now.
yeah, this is the cot. And,
Check.
got it. Good question, though. It's the right question to ask, Todd. As Council Conti and Council Blair will note, just because we went through it when it first came down, the changes, the implementation of the Municipal Modernization Act kind of changed a lot of things, especially as it relates to these revolving funds. So if there are no other questions on that, I would, all those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. From the docket of May 7th, 2019, I entertain a motion regarding the need for funds to pay for the med tax for non-school and non-enterprise employee for the remainder of fiscal year 2019. Therefore, the mayor requests this honorable body to appropriate $47,000 from 1000-359-000 undesignated fund balance free cash general government to account 1145100-5172440 treasurer Medicare tax.
Second.
Thank you, Todd. Laura talked about this last night. This is a moving target, as we know. And when the treasurer did the review of the med tax account, she thinks that we're going to be coming in just a little shy. So the $47,000 will be to cover the rest of fiscal 19. Again, this is an estimate, which is forecast based on the average payroll activity, takes into consideration step increases, things of that nature. Any funds that are not expended will close and go back to the general fund at the end of the fiscal year. Pretty straightforward. Any questions, concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. From the docket of May 7th, 2019, I entertain a motion regarding the appropriation of unused prior year encumbrances funds to the school department. Therefore, the mayor requests this honorable body appropriate $75,463.50 from account 1000-321100, general fund reserved for encumbrances, to account A5200A0-517125, insurance programs, health, HMOs.
Second.
Thank you, Todd. So this is something that happens every year. So what this is essentially is any, and Deb Gould sent, I believe Deb sent a memo out on April 9th. Just to read from it, for the last several years, the city has exceeded the amount of required net school spending. However, the commitment of the city has historically been to appropriate unused prior year encumbrances funds back to the school department for use on eligible net school spending items. In fiscal year 2019, $75,463.50 of prior 2018 encumbrances remain unexpended. So what Mark Furtado would like to see is that $75,463.50 go into the insurance programs, health, HMOs, which has been identified as the account most appropriate. As we know, we talked a lot about this last night. Insurance is always a moving target, so I think this is an appropriate move. Questions, thoughts, concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. And finally, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $9,650 from account 1240100-511000 protective inspection salary to account 1240100-530101 protective inspection professional services to address building commissioner requests for funds due to the continued need for the electrical inspector position.
Second.
Thank you, Todd. This has been kind of an ongoing situation that we've talked. This is a transfer, so they're not asking for an additional appropriation. This is simply a transfer amongst their own accounts, or between their own accounts.
It's going to take them to the end of the year.
Yes. Questions, thoughts, concerns? You guys are easy tonight. I don't hate it. All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Motion passes. I would like to call for an adjournment at 6:52.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. All right. How are you?
I left my keys down here, I did.
Good to see you. I need to catch up with you sometime.
Okay, sure.
I have a brainchild.
Oh, do you?
Grass GIS. So I have the ArcGIS home.
You have a subscription to ArcGIS? Where do you get your shape files?
From the Mass GIS.
Mass GIS, so they're dated, they're old.
Oh, they're updating all the time. I get their emails.
Well, you get their emails, but there is the Google imagery from 2018. The only thing they've updated recently was, I think it was FEMA flood maps, 2019 January.
I get the emails monthly.
You can go on the Mass
Can you
GIS
download the-
website. You can download, you can see exactly what they have and when they've updated it. And
Yeah, because they just add it. They're adding stuff all the time. I just got an email
you may
today.
find that the Mass GIS shapefiles won't work on Grass GIS.
Sorry
I don't know why.
Oh, no, I still have 2 minutes.
They're .lyr files, and they're shapefiles.
1 minute.
For some reason, and maybe it's because I haven't
Actually, while you're in your committee,
reading all about it.
actually, it's not in front of the council yet, so I'll talk to you about it after.
About what?
Today was just the updated parcel.
The Kia thing.
But then
happening
when
tonight.
remember when I did the 500-foot offset from the roads
Yep.
and looking, that was all ArcGIS.
ArcGIS, yeah.
And publish it so that like even ArcGIS can look at it. So they can't change it, but they can review it.
So.
It's just for the Poppy Drive, right?
the assessors
No,
only
Poppy
update
Drive and
typically
Pedro's,
their,
the
GIS.
combustible, combustible.
I'm trying to change that stigma to nightly.
Okay.
So each
I'd like
day
to
we
call to
change
order the License Committee. Present is Heather Parika, Councilor Parika, Vice President Parika, myself. I have 2 motions tonight. From the docket of May 7, 2019, I entertain a motion to approve the permit request for the annual Poppy Drive at various
She
locations
does, I'm sitting right here.
Oh, two. Sorry.
at various locations in Attleboro, May 18th, 2019, conducted by the veterans of VFW Post 115. Rain date is May 25th.
Second.
Everybody knows what the Poppy Drive is. Does anybody have any questions?
No, ma'am?
All those in favor?
Yes, aye.
Motion passes. From the docket of April 16th, 2019, I entertain a motion to approve the amended license to store flammable and combustible liquids for Pedro's Gas Station, 21 South Avenue, Attleboro.
Second?
Any questions at all, anybody?
Ma'am?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. I'd like to adjourn the License Committee at 6:56.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. So,
So you said
Council to order at 7:09 PM. Please stand and join me in a salute to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, excuse me. Yeah, at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the records of March 19th, 2019.
Second?
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. I'd also entertain a motion to approve the records of April 2nd, 2019.
Second?
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. And lastly, I would entertain a motion to approve the records of April 16th, 2019.
Second?
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. And we will move right along. And at this time, I'd entertain a motion to suspend the rules.
Second?
Thank you. The reason for suspending the rules this evening is because we have asked the Economic Development Director to come down this evening and give the council a presentation and update on all the great work she's been doing within the city. And so with that said, all in favor?
Aye.
Do we have to have a roll call vote? Roll call vote, and we'll begin with Council Waterman.
Mr. Waterman.
Aye.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Kobus.
Yes.
Vice President Perica.
Yes.
Mr. Delicio.
Yes.
Ms. Dolan.
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds.
Yes.
Ms. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
President Cooper.
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes. Catherine, come on up.
Can I run to my office, get my glasses?
Absolutely.
If you need to go over.
Yeah, I wish they would just take this one long.
You can sit on the other side, Ty, if you
Yeah.
can go over there. You can grab a chair over there.
I think I'll just bring my chair.
Your daughter's looking for one, too.
While I'm rewinding this, thank you all for giving me the opportunity to present tonight. It's been a very busy couple of months, but one thing that I will say is that when it came to Attleboro, it was because of the pieces and the parts that really attracted me. I saw a lot of things that correlated with my skill set, work that I've done in other communities. But what I wasn't expecting really, and what has very much impressed me, is how connected everyone is and how welcoming and open they are. Especially when it comes to making introductions. Very, very quickly, I've become, intertwined within this community in a way that I've never experienced before. So there's been an awful lot of work that I've been able to accomplish because of that. It's one of those soft skills that you don't really look for in my profession, but when you luck into it, it's an amazing benefit to have on your side. So I wanted to present a little of my strategy tonight. Every day I get mired down in task 1, task 2, task 3, and sometimes it's hard to get the full picture of what economic development will look like in Attleboro. I listed my top 3 goals. Economic development is a multifarious field. There are other items that I haven't even included in this presentation, things like workforce development that are a little bit outside of my priorities, at least for now, for the first year. But what I want to do is I want to introduce you to some of the work that I've been doing within these 3 overarching goal areas. The first one is the traditional economic development activities, what you think of when you think of economic development. Business retention, business expansion, and business attraction. Usually those are done in the reverse order, just because that's what sounds the best to the man on the street. Oh, we're bringing 1,200 jobs. But equally important is letting a company of 50 people expand to 55, or even preventing jobs from leaving the community because they don't have space to expand, or for whatever reason it may be. Goal number 2, has been a very big surprise of mine. I would not have imagined that this would be on my list as one of my priority goals. This is due to the conditions of Attleboro right now and due to just overwhelming interest in the city on behalf of private developers. So facilitating those private developments, trying to usher them through the necessary city processes to get them approvals for what they're doing, and even meeting new ones and trying to figure out if there's a match between some of our properties, some of our land, and what they want to do here. That's my second goal. The third goal is downtown revitalization and placemaking. This is what I did at the federal level. This is really the sweet spot for me. This is what I am very passionate about doing. That's actually goal number 3 for me. So I think that tells you a little bit about how my expectations for Attleboro have shifted, actually. Finally, I'm going to leave you with a summary of some of my priority projects, some things that you're going to be seeing out of me within the next several months, and some of my goals, both for the long-term structural changes, programmatic changes, and also some one-off, one-time programs that I think can help really get the ball rolling in some of these areas. So let's start with the traditional economic development activities. Strengthening businesses is obviously what economic development is all about, and it's really the bread and butter of the industry. The first step in that process is identifying what our businesses are facing, what are their challenges, what are some of the opportunities that we can help them with. Another key item is marketing, and finally just making those connections. If you know a business that needs a loan, have a couple of loan officers that you can easily refer them to. I mean, just as a very simple example of that. Business retention and expansion is for those businesses that we have here now, the Attleboro businesses. I put them first for a reason, because they're already here, they're already invested in the community, and we want to keep them here. Secondly, business attraction. These are people who are interested in Attleboro, who want to give it a shot. Of course, these are the big numbers. Like I said, it's a little more favorable in the press, and it really comes off well when you're able to score the business attraction, but it's not as important as our Attleboro businesses that are here today. I wanted to just give you a little taste, and this is absolutely tiny, and I'm very sorry, but I wanted to give you a little taste of what our economy looks like. I sent this to you all, and I think I gave you all a link, so you can look through this in more leisure. And I have tons of other graphics that I've developed that I just didn't include in this presentation. But I wanted to just give a snapshot. The biggest sector within our economy by employment is healthcare and social services. Not a big surprise. We've got large hospitals. We've got obviously the same healthcare workers that all communities have with home health aides and that sort of thing. The second largest area by employment is manufacturing. That was a surprise to me, because you always hear that manufacturing is on the decline, but it's still a very significant portion of Attleboro's economy. So I just wanted to show you a little glimpse of it for now. Please do reach out to me if you want more data like this. I can pull it up easily because I've got it all saved anyway. But let's talk about strategies for our existing businesses. The first thing we have to do is actually figure out what they need, where they are, and what they want. We're going to do this by sector, and now that it's warm outside and there's actually sun in the sky, as at least there was earlier today, we're going to reach out to these businesses door to door. We're going to do mailings. We're going to try to get them to fill out a survey for us, telling us what they need from us. If it's in terms of educational resources, what does that look like? And I'll get into some of what I've learned already. But reaching out to our businesses and starting the conversation is the most important step. I am in the process of developing targeted workshops for our business community, and the first one's actually tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. So if anybody's interested in exports, we've collaborated with the SBDC, with the Chamber of Commerce, and we're even going to have Mass Development there talking about a program that they offer targeted towards exports. In the future, I'm aiming for an August date, and I've already confirmed several attendees to talk about the cannabis industry and what unique hurdles face those businesses. We've got a couple of nascent companies here in town that fit that bill, and I've talked to my peers in neighboring communities, and a lot of people are wondering what does it take? What are the regulations? How do I set up a bank account for this business? How do I go about incorporating it? What about insurance? So it's a really good idea to host a more regional workshop to reach beyond our borders and to just allow these businesses to come here. Liaison activities with state and local government. This helps with process and regulations. I've actually just today, I made a connection with one of my peers in the south of Bristol County in New Bedford. He came here, I talked to him about our TOD stuff. They're going to be getting South Coast Rail through there hopefully sometime in the not too distant future. And in exchange, I'm learning from him on TIF, what they're doing with their TIF program, which has been highly successful in their community. So just networking with my peers and learning from our state and local government officials here in the area, you're able to get a lot more accomplished. Finally, finding revenue streams for the kind of fun programs that I want to do in the future. This is a little bit difficult, and I'm trying to operate on a shoestring budget right now. I will be referencing grants that I'm seeking in certain areas throughout this presentation. You'll notice that none of them have a match component, and I'll remind you of that. But I'm looking for grants for one-off opportunities, things like signage programs, and one that's in development that I'll talk about later. Grant funding is great for one-time things, kind of shock waves that start conversation and start activity. But then we need recurring program fees or revenues as well to fund programs that we hope to proceed into the future. So if we want to do things like fund facade improvement grants or do streetscape improvements in our downtown or, even something like downtown Wi-Fi, we need a stream of revenue that will not encumber the tax base that can fund those types of things. So part of what I'm doing right now is investigating what those revenue streams could look like. Finally, on this section at least, welcoming new businesses. Business attraction takes a couple different forms. The one I'm most passionate about is entrepreneurial development. I've had a lot of experience in that in my past. Site selection is, again, that more traditional top-down approach to economic development. You work with the big companies, they tell you what specs they need, you try to meet them with the properties you have. And finally, marketing materials. And this is an area where I'm going to try to enlist some help later on down the line. So let's talk about why entrepreneurs are so important. First and foremost, they're risk takers by nature. People who want to start up their own businesses, that's a huge leap. A lot of times it involves things like putting your house up as collateral. These are people who are not afraid to take a big leap when it comes to their ideas and their passions. Secondly, they're here. They're our residents, they're our neighbors, and they have reason to invest in this community beyond what your average regional company might. Finally, they offer more unique products. They really offer a higher quality often than what you get from the more cut and dry site selection approach. So entrepreneurs are pivotal and they tend to be the pioneers of a successful downtown. I'll talk a little bit more about what we're going to do there. I'm meeting entrepreneurs every day. Like I said, one of the unexpected high points of this job has been how readily people introduce me to the people I need to know. And so through other departments, planning, veterans come to mind. Through you all, several of you have connected me to multiple entrepreneurs already. Through organizations like Rotary, through our boards and our commissions, I've met so many entrepreneurs in the community. And I'm trying to figure out what they need and how Attleboro can accommodate that. Secondly, this is one of the programs that I really hope to develop by fall, is going to be a business plan competition. I've already enlisted several partners for that, like the Chamber of Commerce is one of them, SBDC's on board again. I've enlisted several trainers because this will have an educational component for these small businesses from local banks, local insurance providers, local attorneys. And what we're going to do is we're going to teach them the basics of how to build a business, and we're going to have a panel of independent experts analyze these business plans, see which ones have the best chance of success, and there will be money, grant money, and other incentives offered to these businesses to locate in downtown Attleboro. That will be the one requirement of it. I'm going after the Urban Agenda grant through the state, no match, and hopefully if we play our cards right, we can get those funds to pass on to these entrepreneurs so that they can really help form their idea into a viable business. I'm also going to be networking with more of the small business support teams. E4All is a good one in our region, SBDC, SCORE. These are people who work with entrepreneurs on a daily basis who may see Attleboro as a good fit for their business models. More traditional site selection activities. This term is used at least at state and federal level, just to denote the matchmaking of a corporation wants to move its headquarters, and this is what it needs. And you have to find the infrastructure and the site that really meets their needs. I've got a couple strategies for this, and I'll go from the bottom, actually. The more traditional approach is to work through the state's Office of Business Development, and I've already made contact with them on traditional site selection projects. There's a big one in the news right now. I've already let the state know that we're very interested in it, for example. Maintaining that contact is going to be very important for these large type of states trying to steal each other's businesses approach. I don't work that way at the local level, but if the state's doing it, I want to be involved. Then at the top, I'm in the process of amending the vacancy ordinance. I just had a meeting on it today, and hopefully it'll come before y'all soon. But what we're trying to do is, through this, we're going to have a little more ability to gain the specs of the vacant properties that we already have on the commercial side. Figure out what uses they are, what zoning they are, and we're going to have finally the ability to create a database so that I can actually, when I get these calls every couple weeks from somebody saying, hey, I need X square footage to do this, I can scroll through my Rolodex and see the properties that are eligible for that. Right now I don't have that, and I rely on people's local knowledge and word of mouth to do it. It's a very slow, cumbersome process. Hopefully this will help me to gain efficiency. Finally, with marketing materials, I have a request in to BCC for an intern, and hopefully they are in the marketing side of things, because my weakness is graphic design. I can design something and think that it looks great, walk away, come back to my desk and say, oh, that's terrible. I wouldn't go to this thing myself. So I need some help here, and I'm reaching out to some of our partners in the field to help me develop marketing materials for our community. I want to get together some demographic profiles, particularly those that include our pending developments, those that are in permitting process, because how we are on paper is not how we will be in 2 to 3 years, and I'll get into that a little bit more. We have great transportation and market access. That's something we should be singing from the hilltops. We need promotional materials that say, here we are on a train line, on an interstate highway that connects to large cities in the northeastern U.S. This is something we can seriously capitalize on. And finally, workforce information. We've got skills here that other communities don't, and particularly if we adapt them to new developing industries like the wind industry, which is picking up steam in Fall River and New Bedford right now. Our workforce can be a huge selling point for some of those materials and those parts that go into that new industry. Finally, goal 3, you're going to hear some overlap here, because this is a tapestry that we're weaving of different pieces and parts to help businesses at all stages of their development and to really create economic vibrancy throughout Attleboro. So goal 3, downtown revitalization and placemaking. Oop. Oh, no, I'm at goal 2 even. Oh, I'll try to speed up, huh? So making Attleboro an attractive investment. This is the key to attracting developers to our community. I've identified 3 areas of growth for that: expanding my own personal network, getting out there, meeting developers, meeting business owners, people who are willing to invest. Secondly, figuring out the incentive game here in my new state, because this is all still fairly new to me, and I've been relying on a lot of amazing people to help me navigate that process. Finally, preparing our priority sites, identifying them, and then preparing them. So there's a lot that we're doing right now towards each of these. Expanding our network, attending regional events is key, and sometimes they kind of surprise you when they pop out at you. I was at an event on transit-oriented development, and I met an adaptive reuse developer who specializes in taking old buildings and tweaking them to provide new uses in a new economy. I was able to get them out to Attleboro and take them on a tour just a couple weeks ago, and I've met a lot of my developer contacts through attending events like that. They're looking for partnerships just as I am. Cultivating relationships through bank partners and business owners, and you all as well. That's another area that can help me broaden that network and reach more people and really build excitement about Attleboro. When it comes to incentives, we're working on a number of changes right now. The TIF ordinance right now is a little out of date simply because we haven't been active in the field since 2011. And this is a tool that we can use strategically and with limitations to make sure that if there's a gap in financing a certain project and without any kind of incentive, the project won't be built here, this is a tool that we can use to help fill that gap. It exists alongside CDBG as a local level tool. Right now, we don't have the revenue stream to support any other local level incentives. We have to work very closely with our state partners at Massachusetts Office of Business Development and Mass Development to help us in other areas with this type of incentive strategy. It's not something that we want to go overboard with because we don't want to have a reputation of just handing things out right and left. That's something that doesn't really benefit the city overall. But what we do want to do is make sure that projects that would be really cool and amazing economic drivers for our city don't go elsewhere because we can't meet them in the middle. Finally, we have a grant pending for technical assistance services through Mass Development, no match required. And what we're going to do is we're going to investigate what a DIF would look like in downtown Attleboro. District improvement financing is similar to TIF, but instead of an abatement of taxes on the property site, what it does is it funnels those monies into a separate account, which can be used to spur new programs and invest in infrastructure in the downtown area. So what I'd love to do is investigate whether or not this makes sense, which parcels should be included, because you really shouldn't include everything, particularly if it needs a TIF, because you can't use the two programs together. But hopefully we can have a team of experts help us figure out if that's a viable approach to getting these recurring revenue streams. And preparing the priority sites. The first bullet, working with Attleboro Redevelopment Authority on ongoing and future projects, specifically on our transit-oriented development by our train station, this is a presentation that really ought to be separate. I'm not going to get into it right now because currently almost every single square foot that surrounds our train station to the south is in play. There are activities going on from Olive Street to Wall Street, and that's not a presentation that I should be making on my own. That's something that the Attleboro Redevelopment Authority really needs to be involved with. It's a really exciting time for that particular area, and hopefully very soon we can come back to this moment and we'll talk just about that because I think it merits its own discussion. Secondly, we're participating in BST2 meetings. That's Brownfield's support team. It involves a team of federal and state partners to help us work through some of the environmental challenges that we have from our legacy in jewelry manufacturing. We're participating in these meetings, and we've also submitted grants to the EPA for assessments of several of our municipally owned properties that we would like to see either redeveloped somehow or hopefully sold, like the former school buildings that are lying vacant right now. So these EPA assessment grants are just step one of that process. Figure out what, if any, environmental contamination is on the site and what to do with these properties. So that will be hopefully continuing into the future with the EPA and the BSD2 meetings. Finally, we're advocating and seeking funding towards infrastructure projects that really benefit some of our local communities. A fairly recent example was something that was brought to our attention by entrepreneurs on Riverbank Road, that parking was an issue, that there were some access issues on that road, and I've worked with the Department of Public Works to look it over. Hopefully they'll be marking that up because the mayor gave his approval to investigate whether it's feasible to make the improvements within the next fiscal year budget. So these are all ways that we can prepare sites for further development and we can really help businesses to expand and improve. Now we're getting to the downtown revitalization. The business plan competition is something that we've already mentioned, but I'll go into some of the whys of that. Downtown programming and finally aesthetic improvements. The entrepreneurial development efforts dovetail very nicely within our downtown. We can guide new development to the downtown. We don't want to negate development in other parts of the city, but clearly our predominant area that has high vacancy rates is our downtown. So that's one approach to really revitalizing the downtown. The second one is to work with existing draws to downtown. I've been working a lot with the Historic Preservation Society, and I hope I got the name right. I just said it out off the top of my mind. But they're planning a walking tour of our downtown historic structures, and it's very, very cool. They've gotten a lot of our old building owners to open their doors, and they're providing docents to teach our residents about what these buildings used to be. Activities like this, programs like this, like the farmers market, like so many other activities that might take place in our downtown, it brings people there on foot to enjoy food, ambiance, information, whatever it may be. It's a way to capture foot traffic to our local businesses. So these are events that I'm going to support and I'm going to participate in whenever possible. And finally, this intern that I'm hoping to get that hopefully has more of a creative side to them, I would love to put them to work on developing and implementing a programming schedule. So trying to find ways to celebrate certain aspects of Attleboro throughout the year. An Attleboro Jewelry Festival comes to mind, inviting local entrepreneurs, but that's kind of a little on the nose, I would say. But hopefully I can get somebody to help me figure out what a good and achievable programming schedule would look like. And finally, with the aesthetic improvements, the vacancy ordinance that I'm working on right now also does strengthen some of the requirements that are placed on commercial property owners to maintain their properties if they are vacant. Currently, our vacancy ordinance relates to buildings, so if a building's partially occupied, we're unable to go after things like broken windows. So by kind of closing that hole and saying that if it's a vacant commercial property or a unit within that building, we're able to protect how our downtown looks from the outside. We're also going to be seeking grants to invest in public art and infrastructure within our downtown to make sure that it's pleasing, that it draws people in. The more people we can draw into our downtown and the longer we can get them to stay instead of just running into and out of a place, the more return is generated to the communities and to the businesses. Finally, I am working closely and will continue to work closely with planning and development when it comes to streetscape improvements, new development projects, making sure that those fit well within the design context of the city of Attleboro. So finally, just a summary of what to expect. Like I said, there are structural changes that will be ongoing and hopefully permanent or semi-permanent. There will also be one-time projects and priorities that come out of all this work. The ongoing work will include things like business surveys. I hope to do this annually. It may end up being biannual. It depends what our rate of return is. It depends on some of the challenges that I encounter while I'm doing this work. But the business surveys, I think, are integral to my efforts in just taking the pulse of the community. The vacancy ordinance update is one of those structural changes that will remain. TIF ordinance and EDIB regulations related to our incentives that we're offering, these things are structural and will remain in place. Quarterly workshops for existing businesses. Like I said, I've got one that will be tomorrow and another one that is scheduled tentatively for August. I hope to have one of these every 3 months. And so far, there's been a tremendous amount of appetite from the local business services providers to help businesses in this manner. The generation of marketing materials for developers, that's one of those structural changes as well. We're going to need to tweak them over time, but this is something that we really need to have at the ready so we can just hand somebody a pretty pamphlet. And finally, an updated the business and development guide that was published several years ago. That's something that I haven't been able to get to quite yet because I'm still learning the processes that all these businesses are going through each of our departments. But once I get a good grasp of the flow of projects through each of our departments, I'm going to do an updated that business and development guide to make it easier and more streamlined for entrepreneurs to navigate. The one-time projects, there's an RFP that has been drafted and hopefully will gain us an introduction to the Transportation Secretary regarding services for a feasibility study and an economic impact analysis of a potential parking structure within our TOD. That's something that we know anecdotally that there's a parking need downtown, but does it make sense to invest? Will there be enough return to make a parking structure viable into the future, especially considering maintenance costs, electrical vehicles, and what that may do to the needs that we may face in the future. So we're going to have, if we're able to get the funding all sorted out for this by making sure that it's a good investment, and we do have partners that are helping fund this significantly. Hopefully this will dictate that we can proceed with a parking structure in that TOD. So there are a lot of unknowns in that area and it's still fairly murky, but that's something that could change development prospects really for the entire TOD. It could make everything potentially more dense because parking's already a constraint with the one development that we already have going in there. Secondly, we're going to be awaiting the notice of award for the DIF Technical Assistance Services. That's that recurring revenue stream program that I was discussing, and hopefully we'll get a notice of award within the next month or so. We're getting about that time now. We're going to continue forming partnerships and preparing for that grant cycle to open for the Urban Agenda grant so that we can get the entrepreneurial business program up and running. And if that falls through at all, I'm going to start talking to the banks, because I think that banks might be willing to fund this with grant funds as well, because it provides them an ability to reach small businesses before they even start. And finally, we're just awaiting the notices of EPA assessment grants as well. So hopefully those will come through and we'll know what we're working with some of our older and obsolete and vacant buildings that we own. That's about it. It's been a busy couple of months, I'd say, but overall it's been an incredibly rewarding experience, and I've had a lot of fun doing all this. I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have on any of it.
So before we get to questions, I just I have just a couple comments. First of all, thank you for coming, and thank you for your flexibility. I know we pinged you around a little bit because I was away and I wanted to be here for when you presented before the council, so thank you for doing that. But I was happy to hear you describe the welcome you received from the community. I think that the community wanted for many years your sort of passion, desire, and drive to bring long talked about citizen and stakeholder ideas and projects, at least someone to listen to them. Whether they come to fruition, not everything's going to, but to just get an ear and someone who's interested and has a way to help them navigate through something that in and of itself, just walking through the doors of this building to someone, to some people is anxiety provoking. So thank you for that, and I'm happy to hear that. And I think that, what I have heard from people that have called me that have had interactions with you have been absolutely nothing but absolutely 100%, 1,000% really positive in the interactions that they've had with you. Whether I'm on the street and someone has had a meeting with you or met with you, or actually I ran into someone from the state when I was riding on the train who also had saw on the back of my phone, council president happened to sit right next to me, and we were jammed like this, which I hate on the 3-seat things. But we had an opportunity to talk, and they had told me that they had met with you, and they were really impressed with what you brought to the city and how we are getting some momentum in this area that we have longed for. Any other questions or comments for Catherine at this time? Councilor Conti, and then Dolan, and then Holmes. Did you?
So I'm happy to hear that Shark Tank's coming to Attleboro. In the case of the DIF program, Colleen and Taunton was there when it was formed and struggled through the implementation of it. It's a difficult thing to do. And I look forward to it happening in Attleboro because I think it's a good way to bring some activity downtown, like North Attleboro's done with Downtown North Attleboro Association. Your scope of work is enormous, and I'm happy to see you put on a presentation that's streamlined where you're putting your focus on, because you could so easily get distracted and pulled off course. Like Councilor Cooper, I'm really happy that you've been welcomed with open arms, because it's been a long time since we've had someone in your position, and you're cutting new ground in many areas. And so I'm happy to hear that you're getting support from my fellow councilors and from the administration and planning, and certainly if there's anything I can do to help you out, let me know. I'd be happy to chirp in, and that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Councilor Conti. Councilor Dolan.
Thank you for coming. Your enthusiasm just makes me so excited for the future. It really does, and I'm thrilled about what you said regarding current businesses, that you're starting with them, because that's usually not the case. Usually you're looking for new businesses, and I think that's extremely important. I mean, it's the same way when you go get a cell phone. You get a bad deal with somebody you've been with for 20 years, and then the guy's walking through the door and gets a free phone. So starting with our existing businesses and making sure that they're happy and that their needs are met, and hearing their issues if there are any, and then you can see if everybody's having the same issue, if that's something we can address to make them happy and to make them stay. So that I think that's fantastic, and I'm just super excited for the future, and I just can't wait. I really can't.
too.
And thank you for everything that you've done and presenting this to us tonight. Thank you.
Great. Any other, Councilor DeLucia?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I'm really glad to hear you talk about TIFs. I think they're a very important tool. The BST too is important, even going back to when I served on the ARA, so it's good to see their involvement. Is there anything you can share on anything that might be going on in the corner of Park Street and Union with the old Kidstown and George the Tailor, who's been dead since like 1882 or something?
Sure, there is activity going on right there. I mean, it's very important to not to say too much at this stage because things are pretty delicate, but there's an awful lot of development activity that's occurring throughout our downtown right now. From everything like multiple developers interested in certain properties to, properties that are fairly far along within the purchasing timeline to people who are in permitting. So there's a broad spectrum of developer support right now. I can't unfortunately speak to specifics, but there is activity for sure.
Sure.
And while you've been out and about, how have you been received by some of the local banks, the smaller banks, even some of the bigger banks, as well as some of the organizations such as maybe Seed?
Seed is one that I haven't yet made contact with, but what I'll say is that I've been incredibly well received by the local banks, local insurance providers, local attorneys. All the business service providers have been incredibly happy that I'm here because they work with people, they see some of their frustrations and things like permitting, and sometimes their clients come to them with questions that they can't answer, and they see me as a resource that they can connect them to. But I'd say that my reception has been incredibly warm, and I've actually joined the local Rotary Club and have connected with many of the people who work at the local banks through that avenue as well.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Catherine, thank you. I think, maybe we'll do this mid-fall again and give an update, or I did talk to the chair of the Attleboro Redevelopment Authority. He was going to connect with Councilor Conti around perhaps doing a joint presentation with them to come and talk about some of the great work that they're doing. So we may see you before then, but your own update would be good, probably mid-fall, or if anything earth-shattering, please reach out to us. If you need anything, I think you're here in support.
And if anyone in any of your districts needs any support that you're aware of, or any of the farmers market businesses, please connect them to me, because I would love to meet them and I'd love to hear some of their ideas and what I can help them with.
And we will connect at some point.
Good.
Yes.
Please come. I would love for you to come. We're a 85 vendor rotation. We have 50 out of regular. They would love. You'll never get out of there. However, you'll be full by the time you leave. They will give you, try this. So I've fielded a lot of questions about you. I know you're getting your bearings still, and I figured there's no better way to have you come and meet the incubator for small business that the Attleboro Farmers Market is than having you have a little baptism by fire by being our guest on a Saturday.
Well, I was intending to go last weekend, but I was surprised with a weekend trip to Newport, so I will be at the next
lovely.
one.
So, this May one is smaller, so just hold on until June, and come opening day, June 15th, you'll be blown away. So
great, I look forward to it. That was one of the things that attracted me to the community as well, from a livability perspective.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other?
All right.
Going once,
Thank you.
going twice. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so at this time, we will, Mr. Withers, would you kindly read the notice of the first continued public hearing?
Yes, the first public hearing tonight is a continued public hearing relative to application for a special permit pursuant to section 17-10.15, registered marijuana dispensary uses of the revised ordinances from Major Bloom LLC, 50 Loring Street, Hyde Park, Mass.
Thank you. And it's on the top of the packet. If I just follow the order that I put it in. I'm actually going to close that public hearing, but before we declare that closed, I want to read to all of you the recommendation from the Planning office as it relates to the transfer to the Zoning Board of Appeals after lots of emails and lots of discussion with the city solicitor around this issue. So actually, this is from the solicitor and Gary. They had a meeting today. To Municipal Counsel from Cynthia Amara, City Solicitor, and Gary Arajian, Director of Planning and Development, regarding Major Bloom LLC. Date May 7th. Dear Council President and Councilors, in light of the Municipal Council's vote on April 22nd amending the zoning ordinance and thereby designating the Zoning Board of Appeals as a special permit granting authority for marijuana business uses, we respectfully request the Municipal Council authorize your administrative assistant to transfer Major Bloom's pending special permit application and all related documents to the Zoning Board so that it may begin processing the application. Should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to call either of us. So at this time, I am going to close that public hearing and transfer that application to the Zoning Board of Appeals. That'll come out of your committee and go to them. And we can go on to the reading of the next.
Okay, the next public hearing is relative to amending Section 3 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro as it pertains to buildings, and Section 20 as it pertains to Protective Inspection Services Fund number 2603.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in? I thought I saw him come in.
Thank you,
Hi,
Sue.
Bill.
Good evening, Council President Cooper, Council. Bill McDonough, the Inspector of Buildings. During budget meetings and top meetings with Barry and the mayor, trying to work on our budget, I think as most of you know, my electrical inspector was retired as of February 1st, and to replace, he did 27 plus years in the city, and replacing that position, we looked at it in a few different areas, tried to wrap our head around it. Maybe we could do some things a little different, and which is what we're trying to do. We're trying to go back to we want to go back to the payment to the electrical inspector by percentage of the permit fees as it was 28 years ago, as it is with the plumbing inspector and gas inspector. This takes a full-time employee off of the books, off of my budget, and as building business goes booming, then they'll get a higher salary. As it drops, they'll get a lower salary. It won't be any effect other than that to the city. It works out very well. I think that I'm not really sure exactly why it changed when it did 17 years ago. There was also a mechanical inspector at the time that was changed, that was rolled into the building inspector's job, where it belonged. And we took on a full-time inspector for the electrical part of it. I don't believe that that's the best direction for my department. So in order to do that, and I got Barry and the mayor to agree, we had several meetings on the topics, and in order to do that, there were some ordinances that I would need to change. Mainly, it's just housekeeping. If you want me to go over each one of these changes, I can give you a little summary of what it is.
Bill, I don't think you need to unless there's any counselor that needs to. No.
It's basically, it mimics what the plumbing and gas inspector, what that does. There's nothing different with that, just a couple of small housekeeping items on it.
And Council Holmes, you could do some of that at committee meeting.
That's what I was thinking, and I was hoping that I'll give you, we'll
Sure.
connect, and then I could kind of present it to my committee, if that makes sense.
Perfect.
Summarize.
Excellent. Any questions?
Just, so I think this is a great, I fully support this when it comes to out of committee in front of the full council. I think it's a motivator for whoever is in that position. The more work you do, the more the work that's available, the bigger your paycheck. So that keeps them hungry and wanting to work and do a great job. I like that also that it comes in line with the plumbing and gas. The only question that I have, especially now that we're going through the budget and we were talking about fringe, so this position would no longer, we would not have to accommodate for fringe medical benefits, things like that.
Correct.
Okay.
And as I put my budget forward, I am anticipating that this hopefully passes because I did not include that in my budget as it is now. Or if it is in there, then we're ready to take it out, and that's what we're saying.
I think it's a pretty innovative way of looking how to manage some of those healthcare costs that we're also well aware of in this particular position, so it has my support.
Thank you.
Great. Council Blair?
Bill, do we have a group of people out there that are interested?
Oh, there'll be plenty of people that are interested, yeah.
And will it be guys that are in business for themselves?
It can be. It can be someone that's in business for themselves, as is our plumbing and gas inspector. It could also be somebody who is just an electrical inspector who just wants to, or business themselves as the electrical inspector. Yeah, correct. And the same issues, well, the same rules would apply as far as inspections and things when we'll have an alternate inspectors and if there's work that they're doing in the city, things like that. But we keep right on top of that.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. McDonough? Council Clovis?
Quick question. Sure. So the one thing that I would be nervous about would be the potential for somebody to abuse this. And maybe I don't understand the process enough, but the one thing I'd like to know is if there are other community, is this what other towns do?
Yeah, North Attleboro does a similar, they'll do different aspects of it. Well, they'll do a percentage, they'll do an hourly plus percentage. But it's worked extremely well for our plumbing and gas inspector, which is, I mean, he's been there for 20 plus years, I believe. It's the abuse of it, though, I don't understand. You mean as far as, well, they'd still be, as these ordinances say, they still report to me. I'm still their boss, so to speak. So I would be on top of them as far as if they're not doing the inspections on time. They're wrapped right into our online service as well. They still come in like they are an employee. They get paid like a contractor.
And if they find deficiencies and then have to go back out, is that?
They treat it like a salary. It's basically, they don't.
Okay.
If there is a reason for a reinspection, the way that they would charge a $25 reinspection fee, they would get 65% of that back.
So there's not a lot of room for abuse. Okay.
No, and the money is there. It's not something that is going to be nickeled and dimed. It's a decent pay for what they do, for sure.
Great, thank you.
Council Conti?
So, Bill, I think in Taunton, we have a full-time electrical inspector, but there may be a union involved. In your case, it's my belief that you know how to run a department, and you're running a great department, and it's a very busy department. And I'm behind you all the way because you know how to run the department. So I think that what you have is almost like a reverse revolving account. It's sweet. There's no electrical work, there's no payment.
That's right.
And if it gets really busy, like I think last year we had 1,968 permits. Ouch. I mean, how much time does it take? And what I like is your model is expandable. You can have 5 inspectors if you need them.
Correct.
So I'm right behind you all the way, and that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Council Conti. Council Dolan?
So is that what you'll do? Will you have backup? Because I know we have one plumbing.
Yeah, it's everything is actually would work basically exactly how it works today. When our plumbing and gas inspector is Brian Germain.
Yeah.
He's a very prominent plumber and gas installer here in the city. Whenever he does work, we have an alternate inspector who gets paid out of that account to inspect Brian's work. We would do a similar thing with that. If there's somebody on vacation, that money comes out of the inspectors. So when an inspector comes in and does 5 or 6 inspections because the other guy's on vacation, that money comes out of our inspector's pay. So instead of him getting paid, it gets paid to this guy, but it comes out of that money. So it comes out of that 65%.
There'll always be somebody available.
Yes, and it's similar. We'll have 2 or 3 backups just in case something like that.
No, it makes sense because the regular inspectors, the building inspectors, they go over plans, they do stuff on their off time when they're not out inspecting, but electrical inspectors and plumbing don't.
Well, and that's where this is kind of came from, is that If my electrical inspector has a slow day and is doing 9 or 10 inspections, and by 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, he comes to me and he's, hey, boss, what do you want me to do? And
Right.
I'm not going to have him sweep the office, you know? I mean, he can't go out and do zoning stuff, and
Right.
he can only
No, it
drive
makes
around and do
sense.
so much, you
I
know? I mean, we have been busy. It really wouldn't be an issue right now, but over the years, and I just think that it's something to put in place that would really make sense.
No, I agree. Thank you.
And I hope to get it as soon as we can, because the budget, I want to make sure it gets, if it gets approved, it gets approved prior to the budget going through.
Great. Any other questions or comments, Mr. McDonough? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Anyone to speak in opposition? Is there anyone here neither for nor against? Council Holmes, do you see any reason to keep this public hearing open?
I do not.
Great, we will close, that public hearing is closed, and we'll move on to the reading of the next public hearings.
Yes, next public hearings regarding the application from Amalgamated Financial Group 2050 Plainfield Pike, Cranston, Rhode Island, to amend a license to store flammables and combustibles at 237 Washington Street, also known as Assessors Plat 14, Lot 73E, in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 148 of the Mass General Law.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in favor?
Good evening. My name is Steve Pedro with AUB Engineering, here on behalf of Cobia Enterprise. Cobia renovated that site a little while ago, and with that, we identified that the existing tanks, there were 3 tanks, 12,000 gallons, for a total of 36,000 gallons. The new tanks that were put in with the rebuild are 2 15,000-gallon tanks for a total of 30,000. So essentially, it's a 6,000-gallon reduction of flammable storage. We're here looking to amend the license to reflect what's in the ground at this point.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to just make a couple of comments first, and then I'll ask for comments from the council. So, Mr. Pedro, the work at this, let's just be fully transparent, the work at this site has been completed, and was completed without the amended license, and quite frankly, you gave me several weeks ago chest pain because I wasn't sure that any of the inspections had been done from the fire department. I called the fire chief at home before the meeting because I was concerned that that the amendment had not been filed, and made sure, and was concerned that maybe the fire department hadn't done any of the inspections. I didn't know, and so this is a classic case of sort of asking for forgiveness. Not that we would have given you any difficulty in amending your license to go down as long as the fire chief had signed off. But quite frankly, in my opinion, I'm one of 11, one of 10 tonight. Shell knows better. In the Commonwealth, you're doing a lot of rebuilds, and you have a couple of other gas stations in the community. So if you're planning to do it, please come before the council and amend your license prior to the work commencing there. And it's just disappointing that, when we get into these forgiveness before permission things, and I'm not suggesting that it was intentional, but you do a lot of this business. You're not a one-off mom and pop operation, and this should have been. So all the councilors are aware this work is done. The tanks are in the ground. They were inspected. I did get assurance immediately by the fire chief. Called me right back. Called the inspector that works for him, made sure that all the fire marshal's certificates were signed off, the suppression system was installed and inspected correctly and on time, so there was no concern with regard to that. This was simply they did not get the license to store flammable permit amended. So at this point, we can open up questions to Mr. Pedro if there are any. Council Blair?
To you, Mark, am I hearing this correct? This should have come before this body before they started work. Am I correct?
That's right.
So how did that slip through the fire department?
Well, it didn't necessarily, because the fire department did the inspections that they are required to do.
I understand.
But I will follow back up with the chief on, I was away, and so the follow-up is that the fire department make sure they have that So they had a license to store flammables with the permit that they had.
Yeah.
So when they saw that and they saw that they were replacing those tanks, they also didn't trigger that they needed to have an amended license. But that's not one of the things that they sort of check off. They're doing the fire marshal and the suppression system and all the other things, the alarm system if there's a leak and all that stuff that you're very familiar with.
I went through it a couple of times, and I came before this body at that particular time to get the permit to do it.
Right, and so that's what was disappointing to me. That's why I immediately called, the night I saw the application, I immediately called the engineer's office, the company, to find out if the engineer that designed the plan and signed the application to amend was in the building. She called me the next day. We had a conversation. I immediately called the fire department because I was concerned that such a busy gas station, I wanted to make sure that all the inspections were done and that this was put in safely if that gas station was going to stay open after the night that we received that. And I received assurance from the chief of fire department that it was done, but he made several calls and there was a lot of back and forth calling that night. So I want you all to be assured that the fire department did what they needed to do in terms of the inspections necessary for the safe operation of that gas station. This particular permit is late through the gate. Any other comments? Councilor Conti.
So they get the permit from the clerk?
Well, it's issued by the council, but they pick it up from the clerk, yes. They needed to file the amendment with the clerk's office.
And in our ordinances, if they don't have a license, they're allowed to operate pump gas?
So that comes through to pump and do to get it out of the tanks is from the fire department sign off and fire marshal. We are just to store them in the ground, so it's somewhat convoluted, but Shell knows what the rules are in the Commonwealth. Probably one of the ones that knows them better than most, and they didn't follow that is the bottom line.
So, there's one other thing that I didn't understand. Before, in the old days, they had 3 tanks, one for diesel, one for regular, and one for high tests.
Yes.
And now they have 2 tanks.
Correct.
One for diesel and one for gasoline?
No, one for diesel. It's a split tank as a compartment. So there's 15,000 gallons of unleaded. There is 9,000 of premium, and then 6,000 of diesel.
Got it. So technically, you still have 3 tanks.
Yes.
Physically,
there's 2 tanks.
But
one
technically,
split.
it's 3 tanks.
I
can see where the confusion came from.
And I don't want to make an excuse, but some cities and towns, they don't amend the license until the actual tanks are in the ground. Even though they go through the permitting process with the fire department, the inspections, the review, because just now in another town, we've went to the board, got an amendment. Shell decided, Cobia decided not to go forward with the tank work, and then we had to go back to the board and amend it to what's there. So some towns, want the permit amended prior to the installation, and some say, once it's installed, then come back, as long as it's not an increase.
So, President Cooper, I share your angst and anger, because licenses are there for a reason. But in my simple mind, they had 3 tanks, they still have 3 tanks, just 2 of them happen to be in one enclosure. So, and all of the procedures were in place. And thank you for being diligent enough to pick up the phone call and do the investigative discovery, because that's much appreciated.
Well,
and that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Councilor Conti, and I can tell you that when my initial call ended with the fire chief, I said, if when you call me back, the answer to my questions to you are not yes, 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 and yes, I need you to tell me what the steps are to close that gas station.
Right.
There was no discussion about what the next steps were if it had not been properly vetted through the fire department, and that's why the chief did what he did in making additional calls to make sure that things were where they needed to be. So thank you for that. And Councilor Reynolds and then Delicio.
So I would just ask, sir, and also our President Cooper, what would we do now? What would you do differently? How would you handle it so that this wouldn't happen again? Let's say if you were going to enlarge the tanks or look for more storage. Where would the fault, not the fault because it was an accident, but where could you clarify your own policies so this wouldn't happen?
I guess at the initial application to the fire department, where the tank size or the gallonage would change, that at that point we would ask the question, okay, we're changing the storage license. What's the next step to the fire department, again, has seen these plans, they've approved them, they inspected the work, but we should have maybe said to them, okay, we're amending the amount for the license, the storage license. Where do we go for that?
There we go. I appreciate that. That's what I think. And then, so to get back to that, maybe we need to speak with the chief about adding that into their policy so that when someone comes before them...
It triggers that issue.
Right away it would have triggered it, and he would have said, look, you need to go to council first, make sure this is amended. Because I can see how it can get lost in translation if you already have the...
Right. It's not an issuance of a license, it's an amendment.
It's an amendment.
And a lot of times, fire departments, they're not really concerned as long as there's no increase. The tanks don't get any bigger. So
it just didn't trigger his, and it didn't trigger yours. So I think we just need to find that place to put it so that it gets back to us in a more timely fashion than after the work is done.
Right, I agree. Thank you. Councilor
Thank you.
I don't want to belabor the point. All I would say is a mistake's not a mistake unless it goes uncorrected. We're able to correct a mistake. I do share the sentiments of Councilor Conti. That's twice tonight. Something's going on. I don't know if it's a full moon, as well as President Cooper. But I just think that making the assumption that because in other cities and towns it's one way, it's got to be the same way, I think it's a dangerous assumption. And, we're not talking about I'm amending to add square footage to a candy shop. It has to do with gasoline, where people are pumping gas. So, again, I don't want to belabor the point, but...
Thank you. Did you want to say something?
Can I say something? I just wanted to say, I was talking to Mr. Pedro tonight, and this all came about in March. We send out renewal notices, registration renewals, where we put the number of gallons and they have to sign it, and they send it back in and they pay a fee. Very basic, very straightforward. So what happened was, when the company came in, they came in person and dropped off the registration form. We had 36,000 gallons on it, and when they brought it in, they crossed that out and put 30. That was red flag. Sharon waited on them, and she caught it. And she said, well, what's this? And then that's where the red flag came from. But it's a very convoluted system, the underground storage. Nobody really understands this. I go to Clerks Association meetings, nobody understands it. It's really, I talk to the fire department, they don't understand it. And what we do really doesn't have anything to do with what they do, because we do separate things than they do. So it's kind of a mess. And again, I'm not making any excuses, but that's how it was caught. And so that's why it happened. And we caught the same thing on the other place, Pedro's. So anyway, that's all I want to say.
There should be some system that we have to put in place.
Again, that's the chief offered similar sentiments that the putting it, the storage of the flammables is within this semicircle. Every other piece of the it happens in the fire department and was approved and signed off.
That's
so
right.
Just to sort of reiterate that. Any other questions or comments for the gentleman at this time? Mr. Pedro, thank you.
Thank you. And again, my apologies for not, I guess, being thorough in our due diligence in getting this project approved through the fire department, and ultimately it should have been before this board a lot sooner. And I do have the certified mailings for the abutters. I don't know if I...
Yeah, you can give that in that office there to Virginia.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Is there anyone to speak in opposition? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Anyone neither for nor against? Councilor Dolan, do you see any reason to keep this public hearing open?
No, thank you.
I don't either. We will close that public hearing, and we will move on to the reading of the final public hearing this evening.
Yes, and this is a public hearing relative to the deletion of revised ordinance of the City of Attleboro, Section 2-17, Chapter 2, Administration, Council on Disabilities, due to the council becoming a commission.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Anyone to speak in favor? Anyone opposed? Anyone here neither for nor against? Councilor Holmes, do you see any reason to keep this public hearing open?
No, I do not.
Okay, that public hearing is closed. And again, I know we went quickly through that. This is literally a housekeeping matter, and Councilor Holmes will address that again in her committee. Thank you. All right. And we can move right along as soon as I grab mine. Communication to the mayor's communication.
Okay, May 2nd, 2019, dear municipal councilors, excuse me. In an effort for the city to be designated a green community through the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources, I am requesting your honorable body consider adopting the Board of Building Regulations and Standards Stretch Code, which is 780 CMR 115.AA, which is an appendix to the Massachusetts State Building Code. The purpose of the stretch code is to provide a more energy-efficient alternative to the base energy code for new buildings. To date, 250 municipalities in the Commonwealth have adopted this stretch code. City Solicitor Cynthia Mara reviewed the changes and approved them to form. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body vote on the following amendments.
Mr. Withers, I'm going to waive the reading unless anybody objects to the proposed ordinance. We can do that in committee.
Okay.
Okay, and that, you want to start with the furthermore.
Furthermore, I hereby request your honorable body to hold a public hearing at the appropriate time on the above ordinance changes.
Ordinances, elections, and legislative matters, please. And Councilor Holmes, would you like to call for a public hearing on June 4th?
Please.
All in favor?
Aye.
We'll have a public hearing on that matter on June 4th. Thank you.
Thank you. I respectfully submit a communication from Superintendent of Public Works, Michael Tyler, regarding the need for funds to complete the required engineering, design, and construction oversight repair to the Farmers Pond Dam. In order to bring this dam into compliance with dam safety regulations, the city is under obligation to repair the breached area of the embankment as soon as possible. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body appropriate $21,900 from undesignated fund balance, free cash, general government, to account Public Works Professional Services. Copies in your packets.
Public Works Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from City Auditor Deborah Gould regarding net school spending funds. Since these dollars are part of the city's free cash, I hereby request your honorable body appropriate $86,370.92 from account undesignated fund balance, free cash, general government, to account continuing appropriations, school department, fiscal year 2018, net school spending. Copies in your packets.
Budget Appropriations Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from the Library Director Christine Johnson regarding the need for funds for salary needs for the remainder of fiscal year 19. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body transfer $17,525.62 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to the following: $16,125.67 to account library salary, $390 to account library salaries others, $759.95 to account library night differential, and $250 to account library longevity. Upon approval, the available balance on the reserve fund for transfer will be $41,883.35. Copies in your packets.
Budget and Appropriations Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Pastor Cal Carpenter of the Centenary United Methodist Church requesting that the drop-off and pick-up only restriction for certain parking spots on Sanford Street be removed and replaced with 2-hour parking spaces. I support this request and hereby request your honorable body vote on the following amendments to the revised ordinance of the City of Attleboro. Copies in your packets. 1. Delete the words Sanford Street southerly side from North Main Street to Bank Street. See Section 10-5.3 S in Section 10-5.3 B, and replace with Sanford Street southerly side from North Main Street to Bank Street. 2, delete section 10-5.3S.
Ordinances, elections, and legislative matters, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Fire Chief Scott LaChance regarding the need for funds to rent and purchase uniforms for 7 recruit firefighters. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body transfer $5,500 from account Citywide Reserve Fund transfer to the following: $3,500 to account fire rental of uniforms, $2,000 to account fire uniforms. Upon approval, the available balance in the reserve fund for transfer will be $36,383.35. Copies in your packets.
Public Safety Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Fire Chief Scott T. LaChance regarding the need to surplus 4 obsolete LifePak 500 physio-bifastic automatic external defibrillators, or AEDs, that were removed from service and replaced with new AEDs several years ago. The fire department would like to donate these AEDs to the Freiburg Rescue Service, as they can still benefit from using this equipment. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body to declare the automatic external defibrillators as surplus and available for disposition. Copies in your packets.
Public Safety Emergency Management Committee, please.
I respectfully submit for confirmation by your honorable body the appointment of Kelly Tatro, 3 Commonwealth Avenue, to fill an expired term on the Cultural Council. Term to expire February 2022. Copies in your packets.
Personnel and Human Services Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from the Legal Secretary, Allison Wood, regarding equipment that the Recreation Department would like to declare surplus. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body to declare the following as surplus and available for disposition. Copies in your packets. They are an air fryer, a Ford tractor in poor condition, and a John Deere weed whacker in poor condition.
City Property and Claims Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Legal Secretary Allison Wood regarding office furniture that the Police Department would like to declare surplus. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body to declare the following as surplus and available for disposition. Copies in your packets. We have 6 tan steel case desks, very poor condition. 1 gray desk, very poor condition. 5 60-inch tan metal partitions with cubicle wall, very poor condition, and 10 tan metal partitions / cubicle wall, very poor condition. 3 tan metal shelves, very poor, and 1 white steel case desk, very poor.
City Property and Claims Committee, please.
As you know, CDA, Inc. has been managing 95 Pine Street, also known as the old Richardson School. As you may be aware, maintenance issues and related expenses have been mounting for some time, and the CDA Inc. board has been diligently addressing them. However, maintaining the building is putting an enormous financial strain on CDA Inc., as costs are exceeding CDA Inc.'s ability to keep up recurring and expensive non-recurring expenses. In other words, the building is very old and is requiring many additional repairs. Expenses to maintain the building have increased and have surpassed the revenues collected from leases. As such, on May 1st, 2019, the CDA Inc. board voted unanimously to make a recommendation to inform me, in my capacity as mayor, that the CDA Inc. board does not have the means to continue to adequately service and maintain this building. As such, I am making the recommendation to your honorable body to surplus this property and surplus this property and make it available for disposition. Pursuant to Chapter 2-11.2, Disposition of Real Property, a communication was sent to department heads, and there was no interest in this property. The assessed value of this building is $1,696,900. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body to hold a public hearing in accordance with Section 2-11.2 of the city ordinances and to declare that the old Richardson School at 95 Pine Street be available for disposition.
Thank you. City Property and Claims Committee, please. Councilor Reynolds, would you like to have a public hearing on June 4th? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll have a public hearing on that matter. Let me just write this down. On 6/4. Thank you.
I respectfully submit a communication from Superintendent of Park and Forestry, Derek Corsi, regarding the need for funds due to an increase in the International Society of Arboriculture membership fee. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body transfer $10 from account Park and Forestry Heating to account Park and Forestry membership. Copies in your packets.
Public Works Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Personnel Director Owen B. Bowe regarding the changes to the current approved personnel rules and regulations for the city's exempt group. The first change would be language changes to Article 5, annual leave, to allow the minimum charge of annual leave, which is consistent with other bargaining units. An additional change in Article 5 would be language changes that would define leave year and would define the time period as to when an exempt employee must obtain approval carryover vacation time that is in excess of the allowable hours. The second change would be language changes to Article 10, longevity, which is consistent with other bargaining units. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body to approve the requested changes to the rules and regulations for the city's exempt group. Copies in your packets.
Personnel and Human Services Committee, please.
Sincerely, Paul Harrell, Mayor.
Thank you.
And we have a couple of other communications.
Perfect. Moving right along.
The first one is an application for a Class 2 license from Daniel Martinez, 47 Sussex Street, Providence, doing business as R&D Auto Sales, to buy and sell secondhand motor vehicles at 116 Dickens Street, dated April 26, 2019.
License Committee, please. And Council Dolan, would you like to have a public hearing on this matter on May 21st?
Yes, please.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. We'll have a public hearing on that on May 21st.
And the final one is an application for a new Class 1 license from JT Automotive, LLC, doing business as Kia of Attleboro and Kia of South Attleboro, to sell new cars at 795 Newport Ave, Attleboro, dated May 3rd, 2019.
Perfect. Also to the License Committee, and again, Council Dolan, would you like to have a public hearing on May 21st?
Yes, please.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
And that is all, sir, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to go into Committee of the Whole. All in favor? Aye. Can't talk tonight. If there's anybody here that would like to address the council on any issue of city business, now is the time. Seeing no movement, I'd entertain a motion to arise.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. We're moving right along to committee reports. In Council Jackson's absence, I'll recognize Councilor Vice President Parika, which is okay to you.
Thank you, President Cooper. Reporting from Public Works Committee, I have several motions this evening. From the docket of May 7th, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $5,000 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to Recreation Supplies, Recreational Grounds, to purchase various supplies and materials for the remainder of the fiscal year for the Recreation Department.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
Councilor Jackson covered this extensively at her committee meeting last week.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, and we will begin with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Ms. Holmes.
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds.
Yes.
Ms. Dolan.
Yes.
Mr. Delicio.
Yes.
Vice President Parika.
Yes.
Mr. Kobus.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
President Cooper.
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. From the docket of May 7, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor regarding the need to replenish funds used to cover the costs for assistance with the state-mandated Water Management Act permit renewal after an internal transfer was made. Therefore, the mayor hereby requests this honorable body, transfer $24,871.95 from Water Enterprise Fund Reserve Fund for transfer to Water Enterprise Fund Sewer Services.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
I have none.
Any others from the council? Thank you. This requires a roll call vote, and we'll begin with Council Waterman.
Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Kobus.
Yes.
Vice President Parika.
Yes.
Mr. Delicio.
Yes.
Ms. Dolan.
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds.
Yes.
Ms. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
President Cooper.
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. From the docket of May 7, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor regarding a transfer of funds for telephone services to the end of fiscal 2019 for the wastewater department, and hereby request this honorable body to transfer $2,000 from Wastewater Enterprise Fund Reserve Fund for transfer to Wastewater Enterprise Fund telephone.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
No, sir.
Any questions from the council? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, and we'll begin with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Ms. Holmes.
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds.
Yes.
Ms. Dolan.
Yes.
Mr. Delicio.
Yes.
Vice President Parika.
Yes.
Mr. Kobus.
Yes.
Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
President Cooper.
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. From the docket of May 7, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor regarding a transfer of funds for heating to the end, for heating for the end of fiscal year 2019 for the Water Department, and hereby request this honorable body transfer $6,000 from account Wastewater Enterprise Fund, Reserve Fund for transfer, to Wastewater Enterprise Fund heating.
Second.
Thank you. Motions in order. Questions or comments?
No, sir.
Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, and we begin with Council Waterman.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Vice President Perica?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. And finally, from the docket of May 7, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor regarding the need for funds for lights and power to the end of fiscal 2019 for the wastewater department, and hereby request this honorable body appropriate $28,000 from Wastewater Enterprise Fund retained earnings to Wastewater Enterprise Fund lights and power, and additionally transfer $4,000 from Wastewater Enterprise Fund Reserve Fund for transfer to Wastewater Enterprise Fund lights and power.
Second.
Thank you. Motions in order. Any questions or comments?
That just gave me a heart attack. The only thing I'll say is that we're in the middle of our budget hearings. These transfers, you'll see this a lot over the course of the next few weeks, and it's something for us to kind of be cognizant of when we go through the budget hearings with water, wastewater, and general government. That concludes my comment.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote beginning with Council Blair.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Vice President Perica?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you.
That concludes the business for the Public Works Committee, and I call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Great. Thank you. And again, just to, Council Jackson did call me this evening with there's a police matter at the end of a road and the street is closed, so she was unable to get here. So that's why she's not here tonight. Council Waterman.
Yes, thank you. Reporting from the Personnel and Human Services Committee. From the docket of May 7th, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $2,000 from the citywide reserve fund for transfer to account 15101-000-511000 health and salary, as the health department would need additional funds in the salary line for the remainder of fiscal year 2019 due to a medical leave of an employee.
Second.
Thank you. Motions in order. Any questions or comments?
No, I think that's been explained.
Thank you. A voice vote is required. All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes.
Now, from the docket of May 7th, 2019, I move to approve the appointment of Joan Lesperance, 4 Hodges Street, apartment 406, Attleboro, to fill an unexpired term in the Council on Substance Abuse Prevention, term to expire February 2020.
Second.
Thank you. Motions in order. Any questions or comments?
No, she met with us tonight.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, a voice vote is required. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes.
And also from the docket of May 7th, 2019, I move to approve the appointment of Scott Horan, 406 Tiffany Street, Attleboro, to fill an unexpired term on the Traffic Study Commission, term to expire February 2020.
Second.
Thank you. Motions in order. Any questions or comments?
None.
Again, voice vote is Council Vice President Perica.
Thank you very much. I just, through the chair to Councilor Waterman, thank you very much that I wasn't here when he presented in front of your committee. But Mr. Horn, I got an opportunity to speak with him out back.
Right.
And he's really very excited about his appointment. He had heard our pleas for staffing on that particular committee because we struggle keeping a quorum, and I'm very much looking forward to working with him. He seems really excited and motivated. So it was a nice find on that part.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, again, voice vote is required. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes.
Also from the docket of May 7th, 2019, I move to approve the appointment of Bonnie Moore, 68 Bishop Street, Attleboro, fill an expired term on the Conservation Commission, term to expire February 2022.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments? None. Again, a voice vote is required. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes.
Two more from the docket of May 7, 2019. I move to approve the appointment of Fred Uriot, 1010 Oak Hill Ave, Attleboro, to fill an unexpired term on the Planning Board.
Second.
Just term to expire February 20.
Oh, I'm sorry. Term to expire February 2021.
Second.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
No, I think he'll be very good.
A voice vote is required. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes.
The last item from the docket of May 7, 2019, I move to approve the appointment of Mary Flaherty, 358 South Main Street, Attleboro, to fill an unexpired term on the Council on Human Rights, term to expire February 2020.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
No comments.
Perfect. Thank you. The voice vote is required. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes.
That ends the business of the Personnel and Human Services Committee. We'll call another committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Perfect. Thank you. Councilor Conti.
The Capital Improvements and City Development Committee will be meeting next week to discuss what our message will be on the capital improvement plan. But we have no business to bring before the council this evening. Look forward to a meeting next Tuesday night.
Thank you.
No business for zoning and land use. Call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Excellent. Vice President Pickle.
The Transportation and Traffic has no business this evening and calls for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, President Cooper. From the docket of May 7, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor to increase the expenditure limit for revolving fund number 2610 fire ambulances in order to provide additional capacity to pay current expenditures associated with providing EMS service and under the provisions of Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half, as amended, approve the expenditure limit of $1.2 million for revolving fund number 2610 fire ambulances outlined under Chapter 20 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro for the remainder of the fiscal year 2019.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order.
No comments. All these we discussed about 2 hours ago.
Great. A roll. Any other questions from the council? Seeing none, roll call vote is required, and I think we'll begin with Council Waterman.
I believe so, yep.
Yeah, Council.
Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Cobus.
Yes.
Vice President Perica.
Yes.
Mr. Delicio.
Yes.
Ms. Dolan.
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds.
Yes.
Ms. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
President Cooper.
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. From the docket of May 7th, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor regarding the need for funds to pay the med tax for non-school and non-enterprise employees for the remainder of fiscal year 2019. Therefore, the mayor requests this honorable body appropriate $47,000 from undesignated fund balance free cash general government to account treasurer Medicare tax.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
Only thing I'll say is the treasurer was down here last night. It was brought up during the budget hearings as well as Deb Gould talked about it. This is just to get through the end of the fiscal year.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, a roll call vote is required, and we'll begin with Council Blair.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Ms. Holmes.
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds.
Yes.
Ms. Dolan.
Yes.
Mr. Delicio.
Yes.
Vice President Perica.
Yes.
Mr. Cobus.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
President Cooper.
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. From the docket of May 7th, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor regarding the appropriation of unused prior year encumbrance funds to the school department. Therefore, the mayor requests this honorable body appropriate $75,463.50 from account general fund reserve for encumbrances to account A52000A0-51725 insurance programs health HMOs.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, we talked about this 2 hours ago.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, this requires a roll call vote, and we'll begin with Council Waterman.
Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Cobus.
Yes.
Vice President Perica.
Yes.
Mr. Delicio.
Yes.
Ms. Dolan.
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds. Ms. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. And finally, from the docket of May 7th, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $9,650 from protective inspection salary to account protective inspection professional services to address building commissioner request for funds due to the continued need for the electrical inspector position.
Second.
Hold on one second, and then we just for the record, Vice President Parika is abstaining, and
Who's the second?
Laura Dolan.
Thank you.
Councilor Dolan. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. This requires a roll. Did you have a question? Okay. Requires a roll call vote, and we'll begin with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. DeLisio?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
9 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. Real quick, I just want to thank, quick thank you to this honorable body, the department heads, the mayor, Barry and Deb, who came down last night for the first of 3 budget hearings. We pick up again tomorrow at 5:30 and Thursday night at 5:30. If you need to schedule who's coming down, please let me know, because we're not seeing every department head this year. I'm also calling for a meeting on May 15th to discuss a few things that Council Conti would like to discuss. As well, if we can, I have every intention of reading the budget in committee that night. And then on May 20th at 6:30, I'm calling for a meeting. It's a Monday night to finalize the budget message, be ready to vote anything else that might come out of it, so we could realistically be in a position to vote this budget on May 21st. Just about 30 days after it was presented.
What time on the 15th?
6:30 for both. And then finally, I just want to thank everyone who came out to the 12th annual 10-mile river cleanup this year. It was a joy to be able to be one of the co-chairs. We had over 60 volunteers from several different groups representing the city, but really it doesn't happen without our conservation agent and the job that Nick Wiley does for this event every year. He goes out, he scopes where we're going to go. He's literally scoping the river out before we get there. President Cooper, I'm fully hoping for a return from you next year.
As soon as you schedule it, don't schedule it on the first Saturday of May.
Understood. Understood. And it was good to have Barry Lacasse, an original river rat, back in there with us. So it was pretty awesome. So that's all the business for budget and appropriations, and I've already called for meetings at the next appropriate time.
Great, thank you.
Reporting for Licenses Committee, I have 2 motions from the docket of May 7th, 2019. I move to approve the permit request for the annual Poppy Drive at various locations in Attleboro on May 18th, 2019, conducted by the Veterans of VFW Post 115. Rain date is May 25th, 2019.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
Oh, we just discussed this a couple hours ago.
Great, thank you. A voice vote is required. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes 9.
From the docket of April... I'm sorry.
Hold on one second. Steve, did you get that?
I got that.
Yes,
Yep.
Yep, great, thank you.
From the docket of April 16, 2019, I move to approve the application for an amended license to store flammable and combustible liquids for Pedro's Gas Station, 21 South Ave, Attleboro.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
No, we just discussed it.
I'm going to make it just a quick one. And it was brought up about Pedro's. The difference between Pedro's and Shell is about 20, 25 years. Okay? The tanks at Pedro's went in, the size difference, those tanks went in 20 to 25-ish years ago. Shell tanks went in within the last year.
Yes.
That's why I made the comments to Shell and didn't make the same comments to Pedro's, because I think times were a little different. It even went through a change of ownership from Pedro to who is the family member that is currently the owner. So I don't want anybody to think, well, you're crashing down on Shell, but you're not crashing down on Pedro's. And no, I'm not, because of the timing difference. So there was 2 sort of, and Steve described the process and why these 2 things sort of got caught at the same time, because they were filed around the same time, and they noticed that there was a discrepancy between what they were filing and what was actually there. And I will circle back with the chief on that. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Council Reynolds.
I would only add to that Pedro's was a family-owned. It was a small entity compared to Amalgam, you know? I mean, they should know these things because they're a very large company compared to what Pedro's was, you know, just a mom-and-pop type gas station. So I just thought that we have to have a better way of figuring out how to make this process work properly. So.
Agreed. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote and will begin with Council Waterman.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Vice President Parika?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
No, can't.
Skip. Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
9 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
That's all the business I have for License Committee, and would like to call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Great. Thank you. Council Reynolds.
Thank you, President Cooper. Reporting for City Property and Claims Committee from the docket of May 7th, 2019. I move to approve the request of the mayor regarding a donation to set up and install an exterior Wi-Fi system to cover the walking paths and the buildings throughout the zoo with an estimated value of $19,885.34 from the Friends of Capron Park Zoo. In accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, the mayor requests this honorable body to accept these generous donations to the City of Attleboro.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any questions or comments?
I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Great. Councilor Vice President Parika.
Thank you so much. So this is pretty exciting for the zoo. You'll be able to download an app and be able to listen to the interaction. The other portion of it, too, is there'll be a changeover in leadership at the Friends of the Capron Park Zoo coming up soon. Jen, who's the president right now, is moving on. So I happened to bump into her, and she said, I'm opening up the checkbook. She's typically very conservative, but she also knows how to raise a lot of funds, too. So just as we have the opportunity right now before she leaves, to take a moment to say thank you. She's offered great leadership to the Friends and has been able to buy picnic tables. Like the list of things that they have donated to the city to the zoo has been amazing, and we owe her a lot of debt and gratitude for her service. So I just wanted to say thanks to Jen.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Voice vote is required. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes 10-0.
From the docket of April 2nd, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor regarding the old high school at 135 County Street and the parking lot at 0 Cora Street to be declared available for disposition.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any other questions or comments?
I think we opened this up to 2 public hearings, and we received a lot of information, and we know where we're standing at this point.
Yeah. Council Holmes.
I know I'd mentioned this before. I don't know if I can support this. I'd just like to say that. I don't like to see an asset like that leave the city, so I understand it's something that we need to do probably, but that concludes my comments.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, a roll call vote is required, and we'll begin with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
No.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Vice President Parika?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
9 yeas, 1 nay.
Thank you. Motion passes.
I'm sorry. We have a moment of silence for them.
That is all the Business, City Property and Claims Committee has this evening, but I would like to call a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you.
Reporting for ordinance, election, and legislative matters. I have no business this evening, but we'll call for committee meeting at the next appropriate time. Thank you.
Great. Councilor Blair.
Reporting from Public Safety Emergency Management, I have no business this evening. We request a committee meeting next week at the appropriate time.
Great. There is no old business. There are 2 councilors with new business this evening, and we'll first recognize Councilor Holmes and then Councilor Black.
Thank you. I move to refer the following matter to the appropriate committee for study and recommendation to adjust the following exemption amount and eligibility factors from the property tax exemption for senior citizens in Attleboro under General Law, Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 41C, in accordance with Section 51, Chapter 184 of the Acts of 2002 to be effective beginning fiscal year 2020 as follows: by one, increasing the amount of the exemption to $700 from $600. Two, by lowering the age to 65 to qualify from 70.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any other questions or comments?
This it really should be submitted by myself and Virginia. She really helped me a lot with this. It's very confusing because we adopted the Mass General Law, but then we changed the amount, and so it was a lot to kind of create this motion. And I'm looking forward to a few other things coming towards the committee. So this is just the beginning.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Councilor Reynolds.
I just wanted to know, is it 2019 or 20?
It's written correctly in the, Virginia did update it.
Okay, so it is 2020.
It is 20,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Does everybody have the updated one? Yeah, 2020.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, voice vote is required. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. We will refer that matter to the ordinances of, special committee, actually. And the administrations for comment on the impact to the budget. So it'll go to both special committee and the administration. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And hold on one second, let me just write down what I said. Okay.
I move to refer the following matter to the appropriate committee for study and recommendation, that the senior citizen property tax work-off abatement, Mass General Law, Chapter 59-5K, adopted June 22nd, 2000 by Attleboro, increase the total number of participants from 120 to 150.
Second?
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any additional comments? Councilor Holmes.
Thank you. This is something that, so this would be an increase of 30 members, and I'd like to also have the Council on Aging Director, Madeline, come down to explain to us exactly what the process is for individuals to apply, and just look forward to having that conversation.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments? Councilor Blair.
I want to thank you for bringing this forward, and I hope it's the first of many, or at least one important one, where we look at freezing the tax bills for our senior citizens in the near future at a certain age.
Any other questions or comments?
I echo Councilor Blair's sentiments. This is very important, I think. Not only that it allows, hopefully, $700 to be taken off taxes, should we pass that, but also because it gives seniors more meaning, more involvement. Because for a lot of seniors, it's a very boring and lonely life, and my wife is one of these people right now who's working at the library 1 hour a week, and it's been very, very good for her. So thank you for this effort.
Any other?
Just a further comment. I was involved with a city assessor on a couple of occasions where senior citizens come in for that $600 back then exemption. It's pretty tough to qualify for that. It really is. It's amazing. You'd think, all of a sudden, I'm at a certain age, I qualify for the $600 exemption.
That doesn't relate to this motion.
What?
We're talking about the second motion.
The number from 120 to 150.
Yeah, all right, I should have said it earlier, but just to make a point, it's real tough to get these exemptions, so I'll combine it with the other one. And it takes a real process, and it's a little belittling sometimes for the seniors to come in and ask for these, and it's hard to get them because of what they have in the bank and other things to qualify them. so it's tough. And anything we can do for the seniors, I appreciate.
Any other
Thank you,
questions?
Mr. Conti, for letting me continue.
You weren't going to stop
No.
Not like it would.
unless I put a muzzle on him. Yes,
So,
Councilman.
Mr. President, I'd like to call for a committee meeting of the Rules and Procedures Committee.
We're not done with Council Blair. I know.
Sorry, she didn't close her.
No, she didn't. I mean, with Council Holmes, I'm sorry.
Voted on the
And I didn't assign it yet. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this requires a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. And we'll again refer that to the special committee and to the administration. Anything else, Council?
Oh, that concludes the business, thank you. New business.
We're on new business. Any, Council Conti, did you want to call for a committee meeting? Is that what you were trying to
I
do?
would. I'd like to call for a committee meeting for Rules and Procedures next week. Because it's May, I'd like to wrap this up. So I think if we have an airing next week with the committee, then the following week we can take a vote and get passage.
You have one other new bill? Okay.
He just...
Yeah, well, I would have done that anyway for him. Such a nice guy.
Yeah, what are rules for?
None of y'all like
Council Blair.
I move to refer the following matter to the appropriate committee for study and recommendation. To respectfully request an appropriation to the fire department for the second gear extractor prior to the close of FY 2019.
Second.
This is submitted by myself, Councilor Delicio, Councilor Cobus. All of us are on the Public Safety Committee. I heard tonight that evidently I missed the announcement in the Attleboro Sun that they had that the fire chief had made an agreement with the mayor that this was going to be done after the start of next fiscal year. I had asked the mayor to come down and explain to us what his plans were, because it was a rumor that he had plans, and he disrespectfully never got in touch with me or come down. So when I brought this in, I wanted to make sure it was in writing, and it came before the council, not knowing that there was an agreement formed, and we weren't, my committee was not informed of the agreement. So that's my reason for bringing this in. I felt insulted at the time that he never got back to us when we asked, so that's why I'm bringing this in. I hope we get something in writing. Well, either from the chief, fire chief, I would like to see it from the mayor that he's made a commitment to buy this equipment.
Thank you. Councilor Delicio.
Thank you. Yeah, this isn't an us versus them situation, or it shouldn't be. This is a request, something that we've asked for the plan, and as Council Blair said, we haven't received anything. So believe me, I've spent the last 4 weeks studying this budget, and I know what's in there, and we heard some pretty chilling numbers last night. Between reserve fund for transfer and free cash, we're looking at $82,000. But the number that I heard from Owen, which was a little more, was $350,000 for workman's comp, part of which was due to a catastrophic workers' comp situation. So at the very least, all I'm asking for is a plan. When is it, when does he plan to have it coming in? How's it going to be paid for? That's really all. I am not trying to be adversarial, and I don't think anyone on this council is, but this is something we've asked for now. I want to say going back to February, so.
If I may continue, all it would have taken is to put this to rest. There's some communication and keeping us in the loop of something that we felt was very, very important for our fire department. And we weren't done. It didn't happen. That ends my comments.
Thank you. Councilor Reynolds.
So, although I agree with Council Blair that we weren't really informed, and therefore that's why this got to where it is, I won't support this because the chief, the fire chief, did say in an article in the Sun Chronicle that he had a long discussion with the mayor and that he approved and was on board with it coming out in the next fiscal year in July. So again, we were left out of the loop, and we read it in the paper, but it was confirmed by the chief that he was okay with it. And so therefore, I just can't support this.
No.
Not anything to do with Council Blair. I agree with them. As far as not knowing.
I understand that, but as a member of this council, we're not required, or we might miss an article in the Attleboro Sun. If it was sent down to here in a communication, we'd all get it.
Right, but it is happening. Excuse me.
God bless you, you know about it, and you're not on the Public Safety Committee. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Here, Council Waterman.
Yeah, you all know that this is an issue that I really want to see happen. I won't support it, but for these reasons. I definitely want it, I will keep pushing for it, but I have the mayor's word that this is coming down in early July. So
Go
I
to the
will
bank,
accept
see if you can cash that check.
I believe Council Waterman has the floor.
Yes, he does.
Thank you.
Council Waterman.
And I also know that the fire chief is in agreement with that. So for that reason, I will vote no.
And again, I want to remind you, this is not a vote to tell anybody to do anything. This is a vote to introduce new business. Council Conti.
And it's new business that should not be introduced because it's petty. And this is exactly what I don't like about when the council gets this way, is that the only reason, we all know that this is going to happen. The firefighters are going to get what they need. They're going to get the machine. And this is just unnecessary, capricious, whimsical, and arbitrary, and totally uncalled for. And I won't support it. That concludes my comments.
Council Prica.
So I've sat on this council for, I've literally written on my piece of paper, don't talk, don't talk, don't talk, 3 times. I've listened to business be introduced on this municipal council about how to regulate cats in people's backyards. That was accepted and assigned to committee. I've heard and listened to a variety of different pieces of new business that could be deemed capricious. I don't think dealing with occupational cancer is capricious. I think any bit or piece of business that comes in should be assigned to a committee and have the discussion. I'm not telling my fellow councilors how to vote on this. This isn't something that's going to come in front of the council. We have no ability to obtain or demand the funding for it. All it is a placemaker. I believe that this is the intent of Councilor Blair, is that it's a placemaker to remind us that if at the end of July we don't get an appropriation for this, it's time to have the conversation again. My expectation is that the president will assign it to a committee and will refer it back to the administration. We do this all the time. I still have a piece of business in my committee with regards to Beagle Club Road. Also a placekeeper to remind us that this is business that is important and needs to be there. This is simply to assign it to a committee and then refer it as a placemaker to remind us that this is something that's very important. We have the tendency to forget. And so I will support this as new business. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Council Holmes.
Thank you. I hear your comments, Council Conti, but I think that communications have broken down, and it's seeming like we're requesting things and not really being heard, and so I don't know what the solution is, but I do feel like behaviors that this stuff comes out when people are feeling like they're not heard, and so I'm concerned that this seems to be a pattern now of times where we're sending up communications asking for a response and feeling like we're not really getting that. So I'm not sure how to go about solving that because I've tried many different ways, but I do think that this is new business and I will support it. That concludes my comments. Thank you.
Any other questions? Council Delacia.
What I will say is whimsical, political, however you want to put it. We've we've gone the proper routes, and to Council Holmes' points, they haven't been listened to. What we've gotten was, it's political. It's been in the capital improvements plan for 5 years. Well, we haven't had capital improvement meetings where the department heads come down over the last 3 years at least. So we haven't had that venue. We've also heard that the reality is the condition it's in today is a lot worse than it was 5 years ago. That's what this is. And do I expect anything to come of it, to be quite honest? I'm hopeful that there's a communication. We can't request appropriations. We know that. We understand this. But we're trying to get a conversation. This isn't, it shouldn't be an us versus them. And that's going to conclude my comments on this. And I would actually like to move to vote.
Any other?
Move to question.
Second.
Yeah, so, no, we are,
But it's voice, can we do roll call?
yeah. So we'll have a vote on moving. The question, roll call vote, begin with Council Waterman, I believe.
I believe so, yes. So it's on moving the question.
Who was it? Council Clovis, okay. We'll start with Council Waterman, right? Is that what you said?
Mr. Waterman?
No.
To move the question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can you push it to vote?
Not to vote, just to move it,
To
to
move the
vote on it.
question, to make
To
the
end
vote.
discussion.
To vote.
End discussion and we vote.
Discussion.
Okay. Then
Mr.
yes.
Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Vice President Perica?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you, motion passes. And moving on to the motion, we'll roll call vote begin with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
No.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Vice President Perica?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
No.
Mr. Waterman?
No.
President Cooper?
Yes.
7 yeas, 3 nays.
Motion passes. That concludes the committee reports and all the new business. At this time, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'm sorry, I have something, can I just call for, I didn't call for special committee for tax abatement meeting next week. Is that okay?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Aye. We are adjourned at 9:04.